Well, more now on the drastic plan to improve Australia's education system. The Education Minister federally, Simon Birmingham, joins me now. Minister, good morning to you.
G'day, Ben. Good to be with you.
Good to be with you. This report says a whole generation of Australian school children have failed to reach their full potential.
Fordham's quoting a report that states categorically that a whole generation of children has failed to reach their full potential. Okay, what? Not one child, not one kid out of the whole generation reached their full potential. Oh, well, maybe one. Well, how many exactly? Well, they don't say. They just say a whole generation has failed to reach its full potential. So that's just a dramatic statement which instantly indicates that there is some real bullshit and some devious machinations by this banker-controlled government. So let's just have a bit more of a listen to this.
We have heard this before. Today you're saying we need to draw a line in the sand.
Well, this is a landmark report. It does indeed identify that we have had significant failings in terms of student achievement in Australia over recent years compared with other countries.
Important what this sellout has just said there, compared to other countries. Now, he doesn't say that other countries have gone ahead quicker than us, but we're still moving forward, or whether we've gone back. But in an initial statement, when they said they have failed a generation, the implication is that a fail means that they failed compared to everything, previous generations of kids, because they mentioned generations. But they only quote a statistic compared to other countries to justify this. Okay, and it says radical overhaul. Let's keep listening.
But it's a blueprint for change now. It identifies very clearly that we need to change the way the curriculum works.
So they've just wheeled out this report that they're just presenting for the first time now, and without any discussion or examination by the public, by other experts. The minister has already said this has clearly identified all of our problems and has a blueprint for all the solutions. So that again indicates there's something behind this. And what, can we discuss this? No, it's done. No need for discussion. This report, I haven't seen it. I don't know if we're ever going to get to see it. But this report, this one report, that's all we're going on. And we're just going to move forward on that, whether you like it or not.
To actually give clear steps in terms of the progress of Australian students, that we need to put new tools in the hands of teachers to enable them to chart the progress of each of their students.
Tools to chart the progress of each of their children. So each individual kid's progress is going to be monitored by whatever tools this report thinks they need. So you can see now how this is starting to look a bit sinister. Each child is going to be monitored through the school system. Okay, there's a bit more to this.
And that ultimately these types of measures can lift the performance not just of underachievers, but of all students, so that as a nation we perform much, much better.
That all sounds good, Minister, but in practical terms, what can we do to get those outcomes lifted?
He just reiterates how this is going to result in lifting all of our children to achieve better. But that's what the findings of this report that has just appeared from nowhere, out of the blue, that no one's discussed or made any amendments to, just as it is. That's it. That's all. It's all done. You don't need to look at it. Don't need to make any changes. It's already been done. There's Fordham, wide-eyed, reading his side of the script on the teleprompter. And now the question he asks is, what can be done in practical terms to achieve those outcomes? Let's just see if this report has any kind of detail that we can examine and have a look at and maybe even question.
So what we have to do is make sure that in the early years, children are getting the literacy and numeracy skills by age 8 that is required for them to be able to succeed.
Okay, now the deception in that statement is that they opened up with a whole generation of children has failed, and implying that up until in the last generation, no kid by the age of 8 could read or write. But this report is going to correct that, the findings, but he doesn't actually say what the measures are. He just said that's what it's going to do. Well, can we see that, first of all, that it wasn't happening before, and what changes to the curriculum and these tools that the teachers are going to have, how is that going to be applied to then show in a material way what was different, what was done before, what's being done now, and how it's going to improve it? No, he doesn't say it.
And the report outlines very clearly that if we give priority in terms of the curriculum changes and the new tools for teachers in those early years, that will help.
All this slimeball banker sellout, one of Turnbull's followers now, paid and bought for followers, he says, we've got to give priority to the changes and that will help. No, no, no. What are the changes? Tell us what the changes are that are in this report that has just appeared out of the blue. See how slippery and slimy, and they can just use words to make it sound like there's something. They do it all the time, don't they? They actually say nothing at all. And that's because this is one big giant deception, and they're trying to introduce changes not to help kids, but to help monitor kids and keep an eye on them.
Then, of course, in the latter years, you've got to make sure that not just are those foundations in place.
This report, it's a godsend. Like, we just had no hope of ever even knowing what a foundation was, let alone trying to set those foundations in learning. But this report, the findings of it, will solve all those problems. Can you just tell us what one of those findings or changes to the curriculum is? Just one.
But also that students leave ready to engage in a workplace successfully. And that's around having richer, deeper skills, collaborative skills on top of high levels of knowledge, all of which again are identified in the report as the types of steps we can take to achieve that.
Really use some good buzzwords there: higher learning, collaborative skills. But then he says the report spells out the types of steps that we could take. So does the report actually have any of the steps in it? And if it's only talking about the types of steps, if you don't know what those steps are, how do you know that those steps are going to achieve all that it says it's going to achieve?
Am I right in saying that part of the argument here in the report is...
So here's where the script writers of the script he's reading off the teleprompter are stuffed up, because he says here in the report, implying that he's got the report, he's read the report. He didn't start off by saying, look, I've read the report, I've got some questions on some parts of the report. He seems to know nothing about the report at the start, but now he's saying he's implying that he's read something in the report, here in the report. So they've stuffed up there. And look, just look at both of these guys. And Birmingham, look, he's a sellout, but he's so low down. He's just one of Turnbull's followers. And look, Turnbull's low down too, by the way. He's Prime Minister of the country. But when it comes to the rank structure of who's behind all of this stuff worldwide, these guys, look, Birmingham probably hasn't seen the report. He wouldn't be allowed to. Maybe there isn't even a report. And Fordham definitely hasn't seen the report. So these two guys are just way low down, just talking heads. I mean, Birmingham's just fluked his way into a political party and somehow got himself into Parliament on generous wages and pensions and every superannuation, and he's not going to rock the boat. And the people that have taken control of the government through Turnbull, you know, they're just telling him what to do. He's not coming up with any policy or... In fact, this report comes from the famous Gonski. Now, I'll get to that in a minute.
That we need to cater solutions and strategies for the individual as opposed to treating them en masse?
Now, I alluded to it just a little bit earlier on. This is what this is about. Each individual student instead of en masse. So let's just see what Birmingham's side of the script has got to say about that. Let's see if it delves too deeply and gives any detail into a policy that has, based on one report from Gonski, that's already going ahead without any discussion or challenge.
We are right there, Ben, that the report identifies that we should stretch each individual student to their maximum capability.
Prior to this report coming out, no one had ever thought of that. What, stretching a kid to his maximum abilities? Well, thank God Gonski has put this... This Gonski's an absolute genius. He's coming up with stuff that nobody has ever thought of before. Thank God we've got this report.
It says there are too many coasting and cruising kids in Australian schools and classrooms.
What a ridiculous claim to make or statement that this report has identified too many kids are coasting and cruising. Well, there's absolutely no way to reliably quantify how many kids are coasting and cruising. That would require a psychoanalysis of every single child, whatever, how many are in, a couple of million are in the school system, and then work out to identify what is cruising and coasting, what will constitute it, and then say, well, that's what that kid is doing. Yet this report makes a big statement that there are too many. Well, How much is too many? How much would be acceptable? This is just bordering on absolute ludicrousness. But this is the sort of crap they say to bring this in.
Who aren't being extended in terms of their learning. So what you want to make sure is that an A-grade student who might already know everything in the year's worth of subject is actually taught new content during that year so that they're extended even further.
Oh, once again, the report touches on something no one's ever thought of. Giving a kid who's finished all their work extra work. Teachers just would not think of doing that without Godsky. Oh, this Gonski guy, he's like Finkel and the energy report that he's come up with. These guys that are from the same background as Turnbull and those that live in Tel Aviv, they're geniuses coming up with these great reports that we've just got to act on.
Which is why these types of individualised targeted teaching programs can ultimately give us more high achievers as well as lift our underachievers.
What does he mean by targeted individual learning programs, like tailored to each individual child, as opposed to being taught en masse? So that's going to require a lot more resources, obviously, but they don't mind throwing resources at this sort of thing because they say they want them to reach their full potential, okay? Now, I don't know really I don't know what my full potential is. I don't know what anyone's full potential is. But they seem to think you can find out what that is. Well, the only way you can even though I don't think you can, they're going to say that you can. Well, the only way that you could ever try would be to do a full analysis of that kid. Look, do a psychological analysis. Have a look at them. Ask them a lot of questions. Put all that information into a database. This is what it's about. It's profiling all of the kids in the school system. And I'd like to sort of see what sort of questions they're going to ask them about, what they think about certain things, how they think. Oh, now we can tailor this learning program for you now that we know that. Well, they're probably not going to worry about any learning program because that's not what this is about. This is about trying to get as much information about a kid, how they think, and what they may or may not do as far as political activism goes, probably, their voting patterns, all this sort of stuff. That is what this is all about. That's all it can be about, because we've already seen they've given no detail and they've just gone with an absolute load of garbage, which I've already pointed out. I need to point that out again. That's what this is about. And this Birmingham guy, he's just reading the script. He probably hasn't seen a report. He just turns up. What am I reading today? He doesn't have any input into anything. Nothing. He's told what to do.
Sounds like more work for teachers.
Well, it doesn't have to be if we apply the type of recommendations here, that a better structure to the curriculum, more tools for teachers to be able to track individual progression and apply that according to their classroom teaching practices, better advice for teachers then in terms of if a student is at a certain level and progressing in a certain way, what programs, resources they should apply in the classroom. All of those things can ultimately help teachers make better use of their time and get better outcomes for their students.
The only tracking of any student they're going to be doing I'll give you just an example of some of the mindsets at the school. Now, I actually went to a high school recently because one of my kids is going to go into the high school. And we asked one of the other parents in our big group that was being shown around the school, asked this English or history person in the history department, and what sort of things will they be learning? And this year 12 girl who was showing us around says, they'll be learning all about the stolen generation. Now, there's actually debate over as to whether anyone was actually stolen. But in the school, that's already been established. They were stolen. Whereas the term stolen generation was just coined by some academic at a university somewhere, some left-leaning academic, as like a bit of a buzzword, a strike word that they can use. And I felt like saying to this girl, well, what were there actual documents? Was it an official government program that said, like Dick Dastardly style, we're going to steal the children? And at the top of the documents, it had stealing children program, step 1, step 2, let's steal these children. Did they have that? Well, no, of course it wasn't. If it did, then I wouldn't have any argument. Well, of course it is a stolen generation because it set out to steal them, and that's exactly what they did, and that's what they achieved. So therefore, they were stolen. There are some people who have interpreted helping the kids as being stolen. So if a kid challenges that, is that the kind of progress they're going to monitor and correct? That you need to think politically like this? That is also what this is about.
NAPLAN seems to receive a pretty poor report card in this report. Will you scrap it?
No, NAPLAN doesn't receive a report card here. In fact, the NAPLAN data has been essential to be able to deliver this report, to do the analysis that underpins it.
Okay, so they've identified NAPLAN as one of their sources for generating this report, but NAPLAN is just an academic test for each kid. It doesn't define clearly which kids are coasting and cruising, which is what this report has extracted from NAPLAN, or made up out of thin air, which is exactly what they did.
But in time, it may well be that the type of assessment tool that's proposed will overtake NAPLAN in terms of the quick data it gives back to schools and teachers and parents, as well as better, richer information to policymakers.
And that's what you want. You want deeper and richer information on each and every kid, just as opposed to how well they're doing academically. It's just confirming what this is about, and that's what it's about. It's about expanding knowledge or getting data on the kids, getting information on the kids, and then providing any corrective feedback that policymakers, these trusted policymakers like Gonski and Finkel with his energy policy, all these guys, they know what's best for us. It's all bullshit. I'm done.